The South Pacific Islands of New Zealand. They're wild, remote, and a metropolis for the planet's most iconic water birds, penguins. Nearly half the world's 18 penguin species live or breed here, the land where their ancestors first appeared 55 million years ago. Over time, human presence and a range of predators have caused huge declines in their populations, while the birds cope as cleverly as they can. These are the stories of their most tenacious survivors. Penguins are seabirds that don't fly, though their ancestors once could. Today, they're at home on land or sea, where they come to feed. And it's here that they face some of their biggest natural threats: predators like marine mammals or large seagulls. But one penguin species refuses to be victimized. From here, the rippling water looks like a sea monster on patrol. But it's a cluster of penguins closing in on the shoreline. A cloak of darkness is its preferred line of defense against ambush. These night owls are the world's tiniest, and aptly named, little penguins. They're less than a foot long and weigh only 2 pounds. But make no mistake, in the penguin world, they've got swagger. Their posture is unique, tilted instead of upright, as if they're permanently leaning into the wind. Armies of 50 or more nearly identical birds storm the beaches of New Zealand's 3 main islands nightly. Then march inland in precise formation. These little guys are true survivors, nearly 1 million strong in New Zealand and Australia, where they're also known as fairy penguins. The beach is where they're most vulnerable, but they've got that covered. Little penguins know there's safety in numbers, and their night moves mean fewer encounters with hungry predators. In water, these birds are expert swimmers on their own chase for prey, like squid, small fish, and crustaceans. But their forward-sloping bodies make simple rock hopping an almost unnatural challenge. On land, moving stealthily through the dark is their most sensible tactic for reaching their nests alive. Nests. Oops, no straggling. Keeping a low profile is key, leading to some creative choices in real estate. Traditional nests are hidden in rock crevices or underground burrows, and in more urban settings, under buildings or stacks of timber. Little penguins lay a clutch of 2 eggs. Hatchlings are fed and guarded by both parents. They grow and fledge quickly. At 8 weeks, they're independent. Under their parents' roof, the chicks aren't shy about begging for food. In years of plenty, many nesting pairs can raise 2 clutches to adulthood. This high fertility rate is another reason for the species' success. All too soon, it will be dawn. The Cinderella hour for little penguins. Once again, it's time for the group to sneak back to the shoreline before anyone notices them. Among the parents, there's always an early bird. But soon, they'll all head out to hunt for food. By sunrise, they'll have vanished the way they appeared. Little penguins are small, but deceptively mighty. Together, they outwit aggressors and defy the pressures of development with smart survival skills. In some areas, their numbers are even on the rise. Without a doubt, they're New Zealand's penguin success story. Few penguins today are faring quite as well as the little penguin. But no species has been as hard hit in recent decades as the bird that's in every way its opposite. This lone penguin lands defiantly on the beach in broad daylight. It's a large, 2-foot-tall bird, more than double the size of the little penguin, and 5 times its weight, over 10 pounds. It's a yellow-eyed penguin, named for its distinctive yellow iris and striped headband. It's the least social of all penguins, and also one of the world's rarest. This solitary bird, found on the coasts of islands across New Zealand, is endangered. Only some 2,000 breeding pairs remain in the world. The reason? Human interference. From habitat destruction to overfishing and ecotourism. Many of the forests adjacent to coastlines, where the yellow-eyed penguins used to raise their young, have been cleared for farms or pasture land. These penguins can live 20 years or longer. But humans have put other huge obstacles in their path. Non-native mammal predators are among the worst. Pet dogs, wildcats, and weasels all take a heavy toll on the penguins. The simple stress of a dog attack can be lethal to otherwise unharmed chicks. Is all hope lost for these fierce loners? The good news is they've got friends. Conservation efforts have begun to stabilize some colonies. For the yellow eye, the Southern Alps rise on the other side of South Island, surrounded by cliffs and narrow inlets, carved ages ago by retreating glaciers. This is Fiordland, the rugged terrain where some of New Zealand's most adventurous mainland penguins breed. It's August, the middle of winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Icy seas pound the coastline, defying one surfer's attempts to land. He waits to catch the perfect wave to the shore. His style is lacking in finesse, but like any good athlete, he's not a quitter. And after a final thrashing, the Fiordland penguin sticks its landing. Fiordland penguins spend the summer and fall in the Antarctic Ocean, then come ashore in winter to raise their young. These laid-back looking birds stand almost 2 feet tall. Their most distinctive feature is their yellow crest, which males flaunt to show their status and attract potential mates. Penguin World. Skilled at hopping, running, and obstacle jumping. At least most of the time. Even so, it's no cakewalk. The males are returning from 2 weeks at sea. They were feeding on squid, krill, and small fish they've stored to feed their newborns after they hatch. The terrain changes as they climb higher. And as the males enter the rainforest, they face yet another challenging obstacle course that slows their progress. But where there's a will, there's a way. The penguins are now about halfway up the cliff. They've been climbing for more than an hour now. The rocks the birds used as stepping stones are covered with scratches. These marks suggest that many generations of Fiordland penguins have walked this remote path to their breeding grounds. This expedition is about to take an unusual turn. Something that might surprise the Fiordland penguins' ancestors. In the wake of any downpours, the rivers in these forests rise and swell. Strangely, one of the returning males decides to take the plunge. With their flipper wings and waterproof coats of dense feathers, penguins are expert ocean swimmers. But freshwater? This is behavior rarely witnessed in the penguin world. Not to be outdone, the other males follow. Experts are at a loss to explain what these penguins were up to. But for now, they've gotten their land legs back. And this shortcut upstream has saved them time and energy. Every minute counts when you're about to have a full nest. At the top of the cliff, lush forests offer ideal protection for Fiordland penguin nests. Camouflage is a critical survival. With the nest in sight, it's just one final sprint to the finish line. And the long uphill trek is over. Homecoming is celebrated with cries that echo through the forest. Outside of the breeding season, the pair lives independently, but Fiordland penguins are monogamous, reuniting each year at the same beach, and frequently mate for life. It's clear from the female's behavior that there's some movement in the nest. With the first crack in the egg, hatching is imminent. In fact, the chicks are already chirping as they chip away at their shells. After a while, the male slips away from the nest. Where could he possibly be off to so soon? to keep it as dry and the new day has brought new life to the rainforest. 2 Fiordland penguin chicks. Amazingly, both hatchlings have survived. Something uncommon among this species. Now it's the father's job to feed them. He does so by regurgitating the partially digested fish he'd caught at sea directly into their mouths. The male will take on parenting duties for the next 3 weeks as he broods them, while going without food himself. During this period, he'll lose 30% of his body weight. Now that the chicks have hatched, the female is free to head down to the seashore to feed herself and gather supplies for the newborns. After 2 weeks of sitting on the nest alone, she's probably ravenous. But with short legs and a low center of gravity, it's hard to move like an athlete down this steep slope. A gentle waterfall en route looks like an oasis. How could any self-respecting water bird resist? With her newborns now under her mate's wing, a bath must feel like a well-deserved indulgence. Life is good. Despite their skills on land, Fiordland penguins are truly in their element down here on the open seas. And by now, these females can almost taste the seafood. Ready, set, go for it. The ancestors of these seabirds evolved into powerful swimmers and divers to access a wider food supply. Streamlined for speed and propelled by powerful wings, they're as graceful as dolphins. This is a spot where a cold, nutrient-rich ocean current converges with a warm one. The combination results in a plankton bloom, attracting vast schools of fish to a feeding frenzy. It's just what the penguins are counting on. Penguins are said to veer when they catch prey, but it's hard to tell what the A swarm of greedy seabirds notices the hunting penguins and swoops in to take advantage of the situation. They're after the fry that have escaped to the surface. The birds can fly and dive, but not as well, or as deeply as the Fiordland females. But thanks to the penguins, these are easy pickings. After a successful morning at sea, a female hikes back up to the nest with her catch. Every day she'll trek back and forth to the coast, carrying more food to her young. She relieves the male of babysitting duties, for now. The chicks are famished despite constant feeding. One even begs his mother for a second helping. Though it's unusual at this stage of growth, both Fiordland chicks seem to be doing very well in their parents' care. All too soon, the nest comes face to face with the inevitable. When two chicks hatch, ultimately, there's going to be trouble. A sudden fall changes everything. The chick struggles desperately, but it's too young to walk. It's hard to imagine why such an attentive parent would ignore the cries of its offspring. But the adult fails to. But an incident in a neighboring nest begins to shed light on the issue. It's feeding time, and it's obvious that one chick already towers over the other. While the larger chick greedily blocks its sibling, the parent rewards it with all of the food. It probably hatched first, already giving it a nutritional and size advantage in the competition for food. It's not long until the penguin siblings become rivals, and the parents favor the stronger of the two. Fiordland penguins are known as obligate brood reducers. They lay 2 eggs, but never intend to rear more than 1 chick to adulthood. The smaller is always doomed from the start. The practice may be linked to the effort it takes to fledge both siblings, the marathon food hauls from ocean to colony, and the 2 eggs, a cruel insurance policy in case one hatchling fails to survive. It's now mid-October in the Fiordland penguin colony. The chicks are 2 months old. They venture boldly out of their nests, but are not yet independent. They've begun to lose their fluffy down and are almost as large as their parents. But the innocent look in their eyes shows that these youngsters aren't yet ready for life in the outside world. The parents return from yet another trip to the sea. By now, the chicks know exactly what to expect. They beg noisily for the next banquet. Perhaps a little lesson in table manners to set things straight before the meal begins. The dutiful parent won't let its chick go hungry for long. Though the relentless pleading would be enough to grate on any parent's nerves. In fact, there seems to be a general shift in the parents' behavior here regarding their youngsters' demands. No matter how long and hard a chick pesters an adult, it's now met with a blank stare. Or ignored altogether. Sometimes a parent has no choice but to walk away. Meanwhile, the chick is left to contemplate this strange turn of events. Until it simply gives up and follows. Call it tough love, but this is how Fiordland penguins teach their young to practice walking. And it seems to be working. They've traveled about 15 feet from the nest, and someone's built a little more confidence, earning some encouraging praise. The parents gradually increase the distance of these practice walks, allowing the chicks to build stamina and muscle tone for the long treks ahead. There's something else that changes in the parents' routine around this time. Soon, the parents' race will end, Their chicks will leave the nest, and the adults will scatter to the seas across New Zealand. It's November, and the Fiordland penguin chicks are 2.5 months old. The fluffy down is gone, and they no longer look like babies. The eyebrow-like yellow crests that mark them as Fiordlands have begun to appear. Their gait is a bit smoother. And they're clearly practicing their rock climbing skills. And they still look so vulnerable. Are they really ready to make it on their own? Soar through the sea like their graceful parents? They've begun to flap their wings like the ocean athletes they'll become. It may not be long now till they fledge and head out into the world solo. Only 2 days have passed when someone decides to make his move. A young penguin stands some 30 feet from its nest. He's mature physically. But has he mastered the skills to be fully on his own? There's only one way to find out. Without any previous experience in the wild, he has nothing but instinct to guide him to the sea. Fiordland penguins are known for their timidity, so it's no surprise he may be having second thoughts. Finally, he takes the leap and cautiously sets off down the slope. But he soon discovers this journey may be harder than it looked. There are obstacles everywhere to trip you up when you least expect it. If this is how it's going to be, maybe leaving the nest isn't such a good idea after all. He quickly gives up and walks home. Meanwhile, these two youngsters are heading out to sea together. A high five to get things going, and they're off. They begin the long descent, undaunted by the steepness. It's a game of follow the leader. Until a sudden stop on the trail turns into a comical game of leapfrog. The youngsters are excellent traveling companions. One, the fearless pioneer. The other, his loyal sidekick. Soon, they'll see the world, have adventures, and at last, go fishing on their own. And what a stunning first look at their future. The penguins hardly know what to make of it. But the sea is tempting, and they waste no time heading for the waterline to check it out. Nearby, one of the other early birds emerges from the brush. On the long march down the hillside, he's overcome all kinds of unfamiliar obstacles. But there's one more hurdle before he can get his feet wet. The kind that will ultimately help turn him into the all-terrain athlete he's destined to become. He leans in and goes for it. A moment to find his balance, set up for the jump, and he's down. Now what? Out of the blue, an adult appears. It takes stock of the situation, curious to see what will happen next. Taking pity on the youngster, it decides to provide a little guidance. Perhaps grateful for a break after his long journey, the young penguin follows closely behind. This adult is not his parent, just a fellow Fiordland penguin doing a good deed. But down here, the surf packs a punch, delivering its own lesson in survival. Expect the unexpected. All of a sudden, the young penguin is on his own, and perhaps out of his depth. But this saltwater baptism doesn't faze him. Without any swimming experience, he's already getting the hang of it. One by one, the youngsters reach the water's edge. But if there's any hesitation about taking the plunge, there won't be for long. The sea is a tough teacher, and propelling himself through the waves doesn't come as naturally to this bird. Through trial and error, his skills will improve, and life at sea will be the world he knows best. For all young penguins, including the Fiordlands, out here is where their real-life challenges will begin. Only those that can master survival in the open seas will return here 2 or 3 years from now as adults, when they'll climb to the forest to raise their own young. The New Zealand shores are penguins' ancestral home, the place where thousands return each year, defying all threats to their survival. They succeeded by traveling together in the dark of night. Persevering in the face of dangers caused by their human neighbors, and making perilous long-distance journeys to raise their young. After millions of years here, they will not be stopped. Instinct tells them to return, so that future generations may someday join the parade.